welcome to Arirang News. I'm Sean Lim, and this is Late Night Edition. Thanks for joining us for our special election night coverage. Well, it's late, but currently the vote counting process for the nation's 6th local election is very much underway. And so far, 19.7% of all ballots have been counted, and the tally for mayoral and provincial governor posts for Seoul stands at 10.58%, while the count in Gyeonggi-do province, one of the many of the combat areas, is reaching over 11.7% as of 11:50 p.m. Korea time. The city of Busan has already opened over 22% of their ballots, and in Gwangju, where the Liberal power stands strong, has counted over 25% of its ballots. The ballots collected from this Wednesday, as well as those from the early voting period, are continuously being assessed in a 3-step verification process at 252 ballot counting stations nationwide. The National Election Commission expects that although some of the candidates are close to calling their wins, they expect the final results to come in at 3 to 4 hours past midnight. Well, let's turn to the latest voting results that are pouring in. Hwang Ji-hye joins me now in the studio. So, Ji-hye, 6 hours have passed since the polls closed at 6 p.m. We're getting a clearer picture as to how this will go, but some races still seem uncertain.
Yes, and the results as of 11:30 p.m. still show a lot of gray areas, as you said, except for the pretty obvious regions where the ruling either the ruling Seoulite Party or the opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy Party, or NPAD, is traditionally strongly supported. And take a look at this graphic map. We're seeing clear favorites of the ruling Seoulite Party in the bottom right, the southeast region, which means the ruling party managed to be ahead of its rival candidates in its traditional strongholds, whereas on the bottom left, the southwest regions, the main opposition, NPAD, is taking a strong lead, managing to do the same.
So exit polls showed that Park Geun-hye, the incumbent mayor of Seoul, had an obvious win over his rival. What are the actual results showing now?
I mean, the actual results are also very similar to the exit polls, and the incumbent Seoul Mayor Park Geun-hye from the main opposition party is ahead of its rival Chung Mong-jun from the ruling party by a wide margin, and that is by more than 15 percentage points. And I mean, Seoul mayorship carries an extra weight in the Korean politics, as it's widely considered to establish a foothold for becoming the nation's president. Right,
so that seemed to be the premier race. What are some of the other races around the Seoul area?
They're showing very tight races currently. In Gyeonggi-do province, Nam Kyung-pil, who's a very well-recognized Korean politician from the ruling Seoulite Party, is winning over his rival Kim Jin-pyo by around 3 percentage points. So we're seeing some extremely tight race over there. And in another highly contested region, Incheon, candidate Yoo Jung-bok from the ruling Seoulite Party is again winning over the incumbent opposition mayor Song Young-gil by 5 percentage points. So we'll have to keep an eye on these two regions till we get the real results.
Right, and so let's move away from the capital region. What are some of the contested races outside in the larger context?
First in Busan, which is a traditional stronghold of the ruling Seoulite Party, the ruling party candidate Seo Byung-soo is taking the lead by about 5 percentage points against his rival independent candidate Oh Go-don. But in Gwangju, the Liberals' power-based election results show that the NPAD's Yoon Jang-hyun is likely to win against the independent Kang Un-tae. In Daegu, the ruling party candidate Kwon Young-jin is a clear leader against his opposition party rival Kim Bu-kyum.
All right, so it seems as if regionalism was still alive and well in this election.
Yes, and Daegu was surprisingly expected to show a neck-and-neck race while it's a traditional stronghold of the ruling Seoulite Party. And previous elections, the voter turnout remained below 50%. And what is more interesting is that the elections ended in a sweeping victory for the ruling Seoulite Party candidates. But as you said, there were no surprises. And apart from that, with so many regions still showing a tight race, we'll have to wait until for the final results to come out.
All right, and we'll get closer to that at 2 a.m. when you'll be back here in the studio to give us the latest updates. Thank you, Ji-hye. Well, the final voter turnout for this local election was the highest in 16 years. The National Election Commission says this is because of the first ever adopted early voting system. But the total turnout still fell short of the expected 60%. Our Yu Lian tells us why.
A total of 56.8% of eligible voters took part in this local election, making it the second highest participation rate in the past 5 local elections. Breaking it down by the most contested regions, Gangwon-do, Chungcheongbuk-do, and Chungcheongnam-do saw a relatively high voter turnout ranging from 55 to 62%. Cities of Daejeon and Busan was at 54 and 55.6% respectively. In the capital region, Incheon and the populous Gyeonggi-do province saw turnouts fall on the lower side, both at around 53%, while in the capital city of Seoul, it was just above the average at 58.6%.
The voter turnout increased because of the early voting system that allowed people to vote anywhere, regardless of their home address.
The early voting system was adopted for the first time ever last week, and it saw a higher than expected voter turnout of 11.5%. Kim says many people took advantage of the early voting system so they could plan trips on election day. But the final 56.8% voter turnout still fell short of the widely anticipated 60% rate. Some pundits had predicted the Seoul ferry disaster to pull up voter participation rates given recent anti-government sentiment, but it seems it has only worked to turn voters away from politics. Yurian, Arirang News.
Well, let's go over to Seoulite Party headquarters near the National Assembly in Seoul's Yeouido area, where our Chi Myung-gil is standing by. The atmosphere seems to be pretty calm over there, Myung-gil.
Well, that's true. There hasn't been much of a commotion as of yet, but more Seoulite Party lawmakers are expected to arrive here at the Situation Room in the coming hours. The ruling Seoulite Party candidates are expected to be likely winners in 5 regions in the mayoral and provincial governor posts nationwide. Some lawmakers have let out signs of relief as Seoulite Party candidates are leading in the conservative power base in the port city of Busan and Gangwon-do province. But lawmakers are still cautiously monitoring the situations in the too close to call in 4 regions: the mayoral post for the city of Incheon, Daejeon, and the governor post for Gyeonggi-do province and Chungcheongbuk-do province. However, the results for closely contested constituencies could come out as early as Thursday morning.
So if we look at the capital, Seoul's exit poll results and also the numbers that have come in from actual ballot counting, it looks like Park Geun-hye has been reelected. Has the Seoulite Party shown any reactions?
Well, the poll results indicate that incumbent Seoul Mayor Park Geun-hye is likely to score the win. And the ruling Seoulite Party has not yet officially given any reactions towards the ruling party's candidate Chung Mong-jun, who is trailing behind. This whole mayorship position carries great significance in Korean politics, as it is seen as a stepping stone to the presidential ticket. Former Seoul Mayor Lee Myung-bak was elected president in 2002, running on his accomplishments as the top administrator of the city. This whole mayoral post has also been an important governmental post for the president to go forward with managing state affairs and getting support for reforms drives in the country. This was Kim Myung-gil reporting live from Seoulite Party headquarters in Seoul.
All right, thank you, Myung-gil. Now let's go to the other side of the political spectrum, to Kwon So-hwa, who is at the National Assembly, where the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy Party is also closely monitoring the exit polls and also the results coming in. So Park Geun-hye is a projected winner in Seoul's mayoral race. How are the NPAD members reacting to that news?
Well, Sean, the tragic Seoul ferry accident seems to really reflect on today's elections, as there are hardly any reactions being made here at the New Politics Alliance for Democracy's Situation Room. Now, although people have been clapping at the Dongno District's election camp, where incumbent Mayor Park Geun-hye was, here at the National Assembly, the atmosphere is and has been very reserved throughout the evening. The party earlier said that they won't be cheering nor handing out bouquets to possible winners. I only heard a unanimous burst of sound when the very first exit poll results came up. Meanwhile, the NPAD co-leaders Kim Han-gil and An Chol-soo were expected to arrive at the Situation Room past 11, but they have not appeared yet.
Well, so these elections were very interesting because we've been saying that the ruling party could be punished for the ferry disaster, but right now with the tight races, that doesn't seem to be the case.
Right, the NPAD members had said that the votes of the so-called angry moms and dads in their 40s would play a key role in the elections. Now, the party had expressed its concerns of so-called hidden votes of conservative voters, as well as its uncertainty over 10 to 11 swing regions. But the party is glad its candidates are sure to win the Seoul mayoral race, as well as races in their traditional strongholds of Jeollabuk-do and Jeollanam-do province, and also their mayoral candidate Yoon Jang-hyun in Gwangju is expected to win over independent candidate Kang Un-tae, who seems to be a strong rival in earlier opinion polls. Now, it still remains to be seen which party will be seen as the overall winner in the local elections, and also if there will be a clear winner. Now, this has been Kwon So-ah reporting live at the New Politics Alliance for Democracy's Situation Room.
Now let's hear more about the so-called angry mom and dad voting bloc. Nearly all elections here in Korea have had a swing vote playing a decisive role. Experts said voters in their 40s would most likely hold the key this time. But is that how the results are panning out? Our Na Hyun-kyung has more on this political theory.
It's become an established fact in Korea that those in their 50s and older tend to support the conservatives, while people in their 30s and younger lean toward liberal parties. That usually leaves people in their 40s making up most of the swing votes. Experts say the Park Geun-hye administration's handling of the Seoul ferry disaster has changed today's election dynamics in many ways.
Swing voters who saw Prime Minister nominee An Dae-hee withdraw his nomination due to personal ethical issues felt the government was not trustworthy. If a lot of those voters head to the polls, they will likely sway the election results.
But it's not just the ruling party that's being hurt.
There's bound to be a so-called incumbent advantage because the campaign came to a halt for a few weeks due to the ferry disaster. That made it very difficult for challenging candidates to establish their positions.
As for the roughly 12% of the electorate who came out for last week's two-day early voting, most experts say it's unlikely that this will pump up the turnout.
If people take Thursday off, they can go on a long holiday because Memorial Day falls on Friday. So I think those who participated in the early voting are probably people who were going to vote anyway, but can't because of their schedule, meaning there won't be a drastic increase in the overall voter turnout.
All that remains now is to see how many people head to the polls and for their ballots to be counted. Na Hyun-kyung, Arirang News.
Politicians and power brokers have been busy calculating how the political landscape will look after the final tallies come in. If taken as a litmus test for the national leaders, the results have the potential to light fires in the camps of the winners. And our Park Ji-won reports they could also be a good indicator of what to expect in the next presidential race.
The results of the June 4th local elections will significantly change the political landscape of Korea. If the ruling camp wins the election, despite harsh public criticism against the incumbent government following its poor handling of the ferry disaster, the Park Geun-hye administration could gain enough political momentum to steer the state affairs for the rest of her term. The government's ambitious policy goals, which include deregulation reforms and a 3-year plan for economic innovation, may also gain political support. However, if the ruling Seoulite party loses to opposition camps, not only in its traditionally weak regions, but also in regions where neck-and-neck races are expected, the Conservative Party will be in a turmoil starting from an upcoming party convention scheduled in July. Politicians inside the party who are close to President Park will most likely be held responsible. The main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy will also face diverging scenarios according to the results of the elections. If it wins the elections, the late March merger of the former main opposition Democratic Party and political icon An Cheol-soo's new political vision party will gain the justification it so desperately needs. The co-leadership of Kim Han-gil and An Cheol-soo will be strengthened in preparing for the next general elections and eventually the next presidential election. But in the case that the main opposition loses in major neck-and-neck race regions, the co-leadership will be significantly hurt, and the fledgling party could face the danger of being embroiled in factional strife. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
It wasn't just Koreans who headed to the polls on this election day. The largest number of foreigners ever also exercised their right to vote. Korea is the only Asian nation that allows foreigners to vote in local elections. Our Connie Kim explains.
Chinese national Liu Changjun has voted for the first time in Korea. She first came to Korea in 2008 and is mostly interested in issues related to multinational families.
I'm nervous to have voted for the first time. I voted for candidates that support multicultural families and are interested in creating new jobs for women like me.
Yu is one of the nearly 50,000 foreign voters who were able to vote in local elections in the nation. Since 2006, foreigners who have had permanent residency status for more than 3 years have been eligible to vote. Korea is the only nation in Asia that allows foreigners to vote in local elections, although they are not allowed to cast ballots in presidential and general elections. Although foreign voters take up just 0.1% of the total number of voters in Korea, the figure is expected to grow. The number of eligible foreign voters is at its highest level this year at about 48,000, jumping about fourfold since 2010. To boost the voting rate of foreign immigrant women, which make up about 48% of the nation's immigrant population, the Korea Federation of Immigrant Women was established in April.
Many qualified foreign voters do not know they are eligible to vote. We will continue to educate those foreign women on the merits of democracy and why they should have an interest in politics.
The National Election Commission hopes to help foreign voters settle into Korean society by helping them exercise a right to vote in these local elections. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
On to defense matters. South Korea reiterated on Wednesday that it's not considering adopting a U.S.-designed missile defense system. Seoul's defense ministry said that there has not been any consultation between Seoul and Washington on the issue. The missile defense THAAD system can strike medium and intermediate range ballistic missiles mid-air during their terminal phase. The ministry added that the South Korean military is developing its own low-altitude missile defenses that can effectively intercept North Korean missiles. Amid a flurry of diplomatic activity to restart the long-stalled Sixparty denuclearization talks, questions are being raised as to whether China should play a stronger role in bringing North Korea back to the negotiating table. Hwang Sung-yi asked that question to Professor Joel Witt, a former U.S. State Department official specializing in North Korean issues, and apparently we may need a new paradigm.
So I think there are limits to how far China will go, and I think we need to take it upon ourselves to figure out how to solve this problem. We can't rely on China. And particularly speaking as an American, U.S.-Chinese relations, as you know, are not so great at the moment. It's hard for me to comprehend how we can think that China is going to solve this problem for us when our bilateral relationship is not so good. It doesn't make any sense.
How can we solve perhaps this North Korea issue without China?
I think Washington and South Korea should basically inform China that we don't see much hope for resuming the Sixparty talks. We understand that there are limits to what China can do, and therefore the United States and South Korea are going to approach North Korea directly. And we'll keep China informed, but they won't be the middleman anymore.
Do you think the format of the six-party talks has perhaps passed its expiry date? Do we need a new format?
You know, I think that so much time has passed since the six-party talks have been held that it may be worthwhile, rather than clinging to the past, that we do a total review of where we are, where we're going, and how do we avoid the consequences of a North Korea with a growing stockpile of nuclear weapons. So it may be, we should reconsider whether the six-party talks are worthwhile as a forum for future dialogue.
And staying with the latest from Pyongyang, North Korea is considered one of the most secretive and isolated nations in the world, but the regime is taking steps to open its doors to foreign tourists. That's according to an unnamed Chinese travel agency official who says Pyongyang plans to reopen tours to the Baekdusan mountain as early as this month. The tour route borders the Chinese city of Halong and has been closed off since February of last year after the North conducted its third nuclear test. The travel agency official who spoke to Yonhap News says the two-day mountain tour will be available to Chinese nationals and will cost about $175 US. If approved, it would represent another bid by the North to increase its tourism revenues from China as it seeks to shore up much-needed foreign currency reserves. U.S. President Barack Obama has promised to beef up military support in Europe. In Poland, at the start of a four-day European trip, Obama pledged to boost U.S. support of its NATO allies in Eastern Europe, who fear they could be next in line when it comes to Russia's latest expansion into Ukraine. Our Kim Ji-yeon has more.
During his visit to Poland on Tuesday, U.S. President Barack Obama pledged to set up a $1 billion fund that will be used to increase U.S. military deployments in Eastern Europe. It is expected to bolster the defense capabilities of NATO allies in response to Russia's actions in Ukraine. President Obama also highlighted the need to provide economic support for the ailing Ukrainian economy as Kiev tries to settle a gas bill with a Russian supplier.
Poland is joining us in providing Ukraine with critical economic assistance, that our countries are absolutely united in the need to stand with the Ukrainian people as they move forward.
The move is the latest in a series that are meant to reassure U.S. allies of support in the event of a Russian provocation. President Obama urged Russian President Vladimir Putin to rebuild the trust shattered by its annexation of Ukraine's Crimea region. Obama is expected to discuss further support for Ukraine when he meets Ukrainian President-elect Petro Poroshenko in Warsaw on Wednesday. During his three-country tour, Obama will have several opportunities to meet Putin. They're both scheduled to attend events together in Paris on Thursday and another in Normandy on Friday. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
The month of May was one to remember for Korean automakers in the U.S. Kia Motors America says it sold more than 60,000 cars last month for the first time ever, a 15% jump from a year earlier. The company attributed the bumper month to high demand for the redesigned Optima sedan and its compact Soul model. Hyundai Motor America also turned in a record performance with sales up nearly 4% compared to the same period last year. Hyundai sold more than 70,000 units in the U.S. thanks to increased demand for the firm's luxury models like the Equus and Genesis. In just 2 years' time, the number of smartphone users in the world will outnumber those using basic phones worldwide. That's according to a report by Sweden-based Ericsson Mobility, which also says the number of mobile subscriptions, growing at an annual average of 7%, will exceed the world's population next year. Nearly 65% of all phones purchased globally in the first quarter of the year were smartphones, and the number of subscriptions is expected to reach 5.6 billion by 2019. The report adds that a smartphone user in 2019 will be using up nearly 4 times the amount of monthly mobile data that a user does today. Time to get a check on Thursday's weather with Kim Bo-kyung at the Weather Center. Bo-kyung.
Good evening, Sean. On Wednesday, we got to enjoy nice and sunny conditions here in the capital, so there were no major problems heading out to the polls. But it looks to be a different story for those in both Gyeongsang-do provinces and Gangwon-do province, as they're continuing to see sporadic showers at this hour. In fact, they're forecast to get another 5 to 20 millimeters of precipitation, so if you're in those regions, an umbrella will definitely come in handy. Otherwise, here's some good news for those of you making plans for the long weekend, as we should get to see nice and sunny conditions with daytime highs here in Seoul forecast to soar to 30 degrees on Friday. Taking a look at Thursday's readings, Seoul makes it to 26 degrees while Daegu and Busan reach 22. Moving on to other places, Daejeon and Jeju peak at 25 and 22 while Dokdo and Mount Kumgang reach 19. That's all the updates I have for you at this hour, and back to you, Sean.
That's Late Night Edition at this hour. I'm Sean Lim. Thanks for watching. We'll be back at 2 a.m. with the near final nationwide local election results.